You know that picture-perfect image, maybe of rural India? Those really green, flooded rice paddies.
Mm-hmm. Classic.
Picture that in Punjab. It looks so peaceful, right? But the surprising thing is that that scene, those flooded basmati rice fields, they're actually, well, they're at the center of a pretty serious water crisis.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast, isn't it?
It really is.
Mhm.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into what feels like a paradox. Punjab's famous basmati rice and how growing it is draining the state's water.
And the scale of it is, well, it's something else. You've got basmati. It's a huge moneymaker for Punjab for the farmers.
Right.
I mean, almost 70% gets exported, mostly to just 5 countries in West Asia. Think Iran, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, UAE, Yemen.
Wow, 70%.
And it's not new. Exports have skyrocketed over the last 30 years. We're talking 37 times bigger.
37 times.
Yeah.
That's massive.
It really shows how central this crop is to their economy.
Okay, so let's unpack that. India supplies, what, about three-quarters of the world's basmati?
Roughly, yeah, 75%.
And Punjab's share of India's exports is huge, like 40%.
Exactly. So you see why farmers grow it. It brings in good money. Top dollar.
But you mentioned that phrase from a farmer, we're stuck with rice. That really hints at the problem, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, because the economic benefit comes at this significant environmental cost. Punjab's groundwater is just disappearing fast.
Because growing rice, especially basmati paddy, takes so much water.
Inherently, yes. Think about it. You flood the fields before you even sow the seeds.
Right.
Then you have to keep that standing water there pretty much the whole growing season.
Wow.
Only right before harvest do they let the fields dry out.
So months of waterlogged fields across a huge area, the impact on groundwater must be immense.
Oh, it is. The numbers are. Well, they're worrying.
Hmm.
Punjab's stage of groundwater extraction, they call it SOELA, is at 163.76%.
Okay, what does that number actually mean? 163%.
Means for every 100 liters or units of water that naturally go back into the ground, they're pumping out almost 164.
So you're taking out way more than nature puts back in, like overdrawing a bank account consistently.
Exactly. It's unsustainable. And the forecasts, well, they're serious. Some experts are saying Punjab could face a drinking water crisis in maybe 30 years.
30 years.
Some even say it could be as soon as 15 years if
Yeah.
things don't change.
15, wow. That's really not far off. That's within many of our lifetimes.
It underscores the urgency, absolutely.
So how did we get here? How did Punjab, the breadbasket of India, end up in a water crisis? What are the roots of this?
You really have to go back to the Green Revolution, back in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
The government's big push then was for food security for the whole country. So they heavily incentivized growing rice and wheat, especially in states like Punjab.
And it worked, right? India became food secure.
It did work for that goal, yes. Punjab became a massive food producer. But the unintended consequence, looking back, was the shift towards a monoculture, basically just rice and wheat year after year. A cycle, exactly. And the high-yielding varieties they introduced then, while great for production, needed a lot more water than the old traditional types.
Ah, okay. So the success story kind of sowed the seeds for today's problem.
In a way, yes. And policy played a huge role, too.
How so?
Well, the Punjab government started providing heavily subsidized electricity for farmers.
Okay, meaning?
Meaning it became incredibly cheap, almost free, to pump groundwater. They could just drill a well and pump as much as they needed.
Ah, so even if there were canals or rivers, pumping groundwater was just easier and cheaper.
Much cheaper. Forget about canal infrastructure costs or water transport. Just pump it straight from under your field. It created this huge incentive to rely almost entirely on groundwater.
A classic case of good intentions leading to unforeseen problems down the line.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then you have the minimum support price, the MSP, for wheat and paddy.
Right, the guaranteed price.
Exactly. Now, basmati itself doesn't usually have an MSP, but the whole system reinforced that rice-wheat pattern. It reduced the risk for farmers, made those crops the safe, reliable bet.
So the economics, pushed by policy, all pointed towards rice, especially high-value basmati for export, even with the water issue growing.
Precisely. The financial incentives were just too strong. And it's not just the pumping either. There was a report, I think, in Down to Earth. It pointed out that farmers also actively trap rainwater in the paddy fields, which sounds good, but it stops that rainwater from soaking back into the ground to recharge the aquifer.
Oh, wow. So it's extracting too much and preventing natural recharge?
It's a bit of a double whammy, yeah.
It really does sound like a perfect storm brewing.
Yeah.
Has the government tried to do anything? They must be aware of this.
Oh, yes, there have been efforts. They tried promoting something called direct seeding of rice.
Direct seeding, how does that help?
It uses significantly less water because you don't do that initial flooding and transplantation. You sow directly.
Okay, sounds promising.
Oh, they even offered farmers money about 1,500 per acre to switch.
Did it work?
Not really, not widely. Farmers reported the water savings weren't always that great in practice, maybe not enough to change long-standing habits or risk potential yield drops.
Hmm. Okay, so what about just switching crops? Moving away from rice altogether, maybe grow maize
Yeah.
or pulses, things that need less water. Seems logical.
It does seem logical on the surface, but it's pretty complex on the ground.
Why that?
Because the entire agricultural system in Punjab, the infrastructure, storage, transport, the government buying policies, the markets, it's all built around rice and wheat, decades of it.
Ah,
So farmers are, understandably, hesitant. Switching to maize means, is there a reliable buyer? Is the price good? Does the infrastructure support it? Right now, the whole ecosystem still points back to rice and wheat.
so the inertia of the system is a huge barrier.
A massive barrier. The economic incentives just aren't there yet for widespread diversification away from the rice-wheat cycle.
Okay, so we keep circling back to this unsustainable groundwater use for paddy, driven by history, policy, economics. What are some potential solutions people are talking about, seriously considering?
Well, one big idea that comes up a lot is volumetric pricing for groundwater.
Meaning charging for the amount of water used.
Basically, yes. The logic is simple. If water isn't practically free, farmers will have a strong incentive to use it more efficiently. Conserve it.
Makes sense. But easy to implement.
Ha! Well, that's the rub. Huge hurdles. You've got political pushback, obviously.
Sure.
Then the practical challenge, how do you accurately measure and enforce water use across millions of acres and wells? You need infrastructure, monitoring. It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah, I can see that. Theory is one thing, practice is another. That brings us back to Israel, which you mentioned is often cited as a success story.
Right. Israel's experience is really interesting because they faced severe water scarcity and managed a remarkable turnaround.
What do they actually do?
It was a very comprehensive approach, not just one thing. They had centralized planning for water resources. They introduced real pricing for water, making it reflect its actual value,
Okay.
strict rules and enforcement, big public awareness campaigns about saving water, and crucially, huge investment in technology.
Technology like.
Large-scale seawater desalination plants, turning seawater into fresh water, and perhaps most impressively, advanced wastewater recycling. They reuse almost all of it, mostly for agriculture.
Wow. What kind of numbers are we talking about? You had some stats earlier.
Yeah, they're pretty staggering. Back in the 1980s, Israeli farms used something like 72% of the country's fresh water.
Okay, a huge amount.
But instead of just cutting farm use drastically, they focused heavily on treating and reusing wastewater.
The-
By 2015, they were recycling about 86% of their wastewater for farming.
86%.
And now I believe that number's even higher, maybe closer to 96%. It required massive government investment in treatment plants and pipes, but they essentially created a new, reliable water source for agriculture.
That's incredible. A world leader in it. And the pricing helped drive that too.
Absolutely. Their pricing model is key. Farmers usually get a basic quota of water at a reasonable price.
Right.
But if they go over that quota, the price goes up sharply. Penalties for overuse.
Ah, an incentive to stay within limits.
Exactly. And they also vary the price based on water quality. So the recycled wastewater, which is fine for irrigation, becomes cheaper than using high-quality fresh water for crops. It pushes farmers towards the recycled option.
More.
The result is much more efficient water use overall without really hurting agricultural output.
So it's tech, policy, pricing, awareness, a whole package deal.
A systems approach, yeah.
Are there any similar, maybe more local innovations being tried in Punjab? Things adapted to that context?
Yes, definitely. There are some encouraging things happening. For example, there's a technique being tested and promoted called seeding of rice on beds, or SRB.
SRB, how's that different?
Instead of flooding the whole field, you grow the paddy on raised soil beds, like ridges. And you only irrigate in the furrows between the beds. Much more targeted water application.
And does it save water?
Early trials are promising. It seems it could potentially cut water use by 30, maybe even 40% compared to the traditional flooding.
30 to 40%, that's significant.
It really is. It's good to see these locally focused solutions being explored.
Definitely. What about simpler things? Any smaller changes that could still make a difference if done widely?
Yeah, Absolutely. Even small shifts add up. Research suggests that just delaying the transplanting of rice seedlings.
When they move the young plants into the main field.
Exactly. Delaying that until after June 10th across all the rice fields in Punjab, that's about 3 million hectares.
Wow.
That alone could slow down the groundwater depletion rate by maybe 1.5 centimeters a year.
Just by shifting the date a bit.
Yeah, because it aligns the main growing period with more of the monsoon season, potentially reducing the need for pumped irrigation early on.
Interesting. Anything else?
Another idea is renovating old village ponds. Punjab has thousands of them, many underused or derelict.
Right.
Fixing those up so they can capture and hold rainwater could help recharge the groundwater. Estimates suggest maybe adding 6 centimeters of recharge per year through better rainwater harvesting.
So it sounds like there's no single silver bullet.
No, definitely not.
It's going to take a mix of strategies, new techniques like SRB, maybe policy changes like pricing eventually, plus these smaller, wider adjustments like planting dates and pond restoration.
That's exactly it. The solutions, or potential solutions, are there. But making them happen needs everyone pulling together: farmers, policymakers, communities. It needs real cooperation and a shared understanding of the stakes.
Right.
The big challenge at the end of the day is finding that balance. How can basmati, with all its economic importance and history, continue to be grown without, well, without drying up Punjab?
It really brings us back to that paradox we started with, doesn't it? The success of basmati is tied directly to this looming environmental crisis.
Intrinsically linked.
So think about this. With global demand for basmati still strong and farmers needing that income, what kind of fundamental shifts are really needed to break this link? Is it about changing how we farm, or maybe how we as consumers think about the water footprint of our food? Or does it go all the way up to international trade?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It's clearly this complex web economics, environment policy, finding a truly sustainable way forward for basmati in Punjab. Yeah, that's going to take some serious collaborative thinking from everyone involved.
It certainly is.